11. Understandings. He'd seen worse at second half in away games. He'd seen massive fire-breathing larvae crawl out of a kicker's eyes with 40 seconds left on the clock. He'd seen coaches with horns and bat wings screaming fire at their star players. But it was always up for debate. Every time Amaru saw the madness, he had a compulsive urge to fight it. To go to war. He'd lose it. And when he came to, they'd look normal. Like it was a trick. He'd fallen for it again. The trick. He tackled the beast. Lexa called it a bloodworm. The name fit. To Amaru, in his panicked state, the best way he could describe it was a worm made from twisted human parts. It was horrendous and writhing in his grip, secreting a foul blood slime from its stretched out pores and gaping mouth. They blasted through a tree like it was made of hollow plastic. Wood shards and leaves clouded his vision and fell from above as they rolled. He punched and kicked, feeling his knuckles dig into watery bubbling flesh. He punched until bruises formed in the dark and the red went purple. It was then, as he was thrown off the creature and collided with a tree so hard his ribs creaked, that he realized. The bloodworm writhed on the floor angrily. Its tongue-like prehensile sucker spiraled from its screaming face and sucked up the blood spurting from the bruise-ringed holes in its body where Amaru punched. It was purely greedy, entirely enraged, absolutely abhorrent. It wasn't a trick, it's real. It was the most bizarre realization for Amaru. For his whole life, for as long as he could remember, he'd been told what he saw wasn't real. Doctors, therapists, school counselors, foster care coordinators. They all told him he had an active imagination. Trauma. Fears to face reality. He was seeing reality. He'd been seeing it. Reality was as nightmarish as he thought. And he just tackled it through a tree. A 8-foot-tall man so full of blood and foul substances that he'd turned into a bright red worm with a scorpion tongue. It wasn't a trick. The fear began to set in as the bloodworm rose up with a chortling hiss. Its tongue spun and licked at the air, scenting his fear. Tasting the blood molecules wafting from his cuts and splintered wounds. He could distantly hear Lexa and the wolves. It all faded as the bloodworm charged. Everything faded. The trees. The dead earth. The stars beaming through the night sky from light years away. It was all gone. All Amaru could see was the bloodworm slithering after him. Suddenly the rage was overshadowed by fear. The monsters were real and worse than ever. And he was only an orphan teenager with a criminal record as long as a grocery list. The bloodworm tackled him. He went down hard under the liquid-filled weight of the beast. It should have killed him right there. He froze. On the field he only froze once and it cost him a broken nose and rib after a Division I running back ran through him. That was death on the field. He was taken out of the game. The bloodworm should have been his death in real life. But it was too fat. Too full of blood like a mosquito at a cookout. The thing squirmed and rolled to try and reach him. Its prehensile barbed tongue spiraled and cut deep arcs into the earth trying to swat at him and make his blood flow. All Amaru could do was thrash and panic. He was being crushed by a monster. Until he wasn't. Something pierced his chest. It was cold as ice but it left his skin surrounding with a fiery hotness. The bloodworm screeched. The sound of flesh tearing echoed. He could hear again. When the bloodworm was torn off of him he realized then that he could also see again. More than the bloodworm. He could see wolves standing over him defensively. Even the one that was once damaged beyond repair. She was as good as new and ready to do it all again. As he recovered he found the bloodworm slithering after someone. Someone he recognized by the clothing. The gothic shoes and leather pants. The dark hair and tan skin. But the familiarity ended there. Lexa was different. Her brows had thickened, casting shadows over her eyes that now glowed yellow. Her sideburns thickened and flowed down her jaw. Claws tipped her fingers, fangs touched her lips as she grinned. Her sharpened, almost 11, ears twitched. Her black axe blazed with shadowy black fire. You're a male. Good. The bloodworm healed before she could finish speaking and charged. She snarled and spun her axe with inhuman speed. Yo, sorry for the disappearance. I hope you can forgive me. Anyway, we've got Amaru feeling genuine fear as his delusions are confirmed as reality. Wonder what happens next. TableTopSlop creators' thoughts. 1 comments 0 vote. 12. Awakenings. Lexa's palms were so sweaty, you would have thought she just dipped her hands in an ocean. Even as fur bloomed and the skin toughened like that of a wolf's paw. Her mother, Ms. Marcos, always told her that the Garo's greatest strength was their rage. It could take them to incredible heights and brought about the crux of their power. The change. But Lexa didn't feel much rage. She felt fear. She'd heard stories of bloodworms taking out entire villages in more remote parts of the globe. They were a terrifying unification of vampire and bane. An insatiably hungry spirit that somehow grabbed hold of an insatiably hungry species. She could feel it, its hunger as it slithered and spun through the forestry to pursue her. Its body rippled with virulent blood and malevolent essence. Its eyes were black holes sucking in every ounce of light in the night. It wanted every piece of her. And it was all scarier with the stakes in mind. I have one of very few around with me, he hasn't experienced his first shift. He doesn't even look like the fabled warriors, he's frozen with fear. Our saving grace has his tail between his legs. But I haven't experienced my first shift either. I'm just as scared. I don't know how to kill this thing. Lexa thought before hooking her axe blade around a thin tree. The curve caused her to spin around. With a wild snarl, she launched herself at the creature as it gave chase. Without meaning to, she cleaved the tree in half with the force of her pull. Splinter shards surrounded her as she charged the bloodworm with an overhead swing of her axe. The bloodworm ducked low and leg swept her with that blinding vampiric speed she'd never get used to. She was thrown off into the distance and crashed and burned in the dead leaf-littered ground. Before she landed, she knew her leg was shattered. She could hear the other Garou defending. The pain was blinding. But it was nothing compared to the rage. Rage from failure. Rage from defeat. Since her birth she'd been told time and time again how her kind was losing. They were dying. The apocalypse wasn't coming, they lived it. She lived it. A capitalistic grimdark slow burn of manufactured spiritual genocides and chemical warfare. And now, she was at her end. A final failure. Failing to protect the Around. The very thing her kind needed to end the apocalypse. It was like having a slab of meat dangled in front of you after being starved your whole life. Only to lose it because you're too weak to snatch it off the stick. Too weak. Too weak. She shook as she laid on the ground. Gnosis flowed off her like aquamarine flames. Her skin darkened. Her partial form developed in a violent flash of snapping bones, bubbling muscle, tearing skin and flowing fur. She hit the ground as a wolfish young girl in over her head and quickly rose as a fully established Garou in her Krynos form. The spirits associated with the Black Furies rose with her. Ancient wolf spirits. Mother Canids protecting their cubs. High-flying Pegasi circled her from the clouds and other uniquely formed entities better left undescribed. They welcomed their fully formed child into the physical and spiritual world with an invigorating boost of power that quickly enabled her frenzy. What came from every Garou's first change? It was unavoidable. The rage was untamable. The hunger was insatiable. Gaia flowed through her as she raised her axe and howled. The sound was deafening to Amaru. It was jarring. Everything had happened entirely too fast. One moment he was being squashed by a nightmarish larva beast. The next, he was watching the goth aesthetic daughter of a bizarrely militant attorney transform into a werewolf. She was massive. As a human-appearing teenage girl she was large. Tall. Imposing. Thick legs and arms to match. Now she dwarfed her old self. She was 7 feet tall with a massive snout. Her fur was as dark as the midnight sky minus the stars. She tore out of her leather clothes like they were made of one-ply toilet paper, revealing the streak of white running down her back. Like a skunk straight from hell. A weird essence flowed off her raised hackles, distorting the air around her like some sort of fire or magic exhaust. Weird shapes and forms surrounded her, seemingly made of the same aquamarine flame. The bloodworm turned and ran, coiling up a tree to avoid Lexa, the werewolf. As a result, the bloodworm jumped over him and wrapped the tree behind him like a snake. Lexa gave chase. Amaru only knew because he felt her mass blow past him. Trailed by the two wolves. She was so fast, he couldn't follow her with his eyes. Which was horrifying considering she had to be over 500 pounds. The world's greatest running back could never. She jumped 20 feet into the air and latched onto the tree with thick black talons. The bloodworm, who was only a few feet above her, looked down at her and roared a caustic miasma of giant mosquitoes and blackish red mist. Lexa, in a frenzy of sorts, didn't give a singular damn. She snarled and leapt up the tree, slashing through the death cloud. She barked and yelped between leonine roars as the giant mosquitoes bit into her face and flooded her mouth. They grew to massive ulcer size full of bubbling glowing blood. She pushed on, climbing up the tree after the bloodworm. They rose until they hit the very top. The bloodworm was first. Lexa was right behind and grabbed its fatty tail, if you could call it that. They were so high up that Amaru could barely see them. He focused. He shivered. He watched as Lexa pulled and raged until finally, she raised her axe and brought it down on the bloodworm's spine. The chopping sound was so loud, Amaru could hear birds flee from their branches miles away. She snarled victoriously and ripped the axe out. The werewolf roared, feeding on whatever evil essence was in the bloodworm. She used her other hand and pulled the bloodworm down closer to her. It wouldn't unwrap from the trees. She wouldn't relent. She was growing stronger. Amaru could feel it in the air. He could see it as more of the aquamarine magical exhaust flowed from her. Or entered her. He couldn't really tell beyond the supernatural glow. She snarled and barked. Her muscles expanded. She dug her pawed feet deeper into the tree's holds and yanked. The bloodworm was ripped downward, snapping through branches and taking in thick wooden slivers due to the tightness of its grip. The thing screamed in agony. A true cry of pain. Different from the last. Lexa raised her axe again and brought it down on its spine. This time further up, closer to the head, the brain. Its blood spurted like a geyser. She let go of the axe and lunged up the tree, landing on the creature's back. She bit and clawed at it in a wild rage. It was brilliant. It was cathartic in a way he couldn't fully explain. Only witness. His whole life, he'd been seeing things like the bloodworm. As a boy he was terrified. As a teen, he was disillusioned, confused, enraged. He fought his fears, only to find, to be told, they weren't real. And there she was, fighting his greatest fear, in all its realness. It wasn't fading or turning back into the opposing team's defensive lineman. It wasn't a passing sight on a drive to an away game in the big city. It was real. It tried to kill him. It was dying. And Lexa was killing it. Amaru could only describe what he was experiencing as fascinating. Enticing. More blood flowed. It covered Lexa as she vanquished the creature. The foul red smothered her. It made her gag as she swiped and slashed like a wild monkey. It made her sick. But she kept on. It ripped through her. Amaru's heart skipped a beat. Two glowing red spikes of blood, seemingly solidified by will, ripped through Lexa's chest and came out of her back. She slowed, eyes wide. The pain of it seemingly turned her human brain back on. The bloodworm chortled and bucked her off. She fell 60 feet, hitting the ground so hard a small mushroom cloud of dust and dirt rose around her. Her axe fell into the ground at Amaru's feet. The wild flame of power surrounding its dark-bladed edges faded. Amaru exhaled for the first time in a long time. Dread filled him. It covered him, in an ice-cold sweat. In a bizarre way, for a scarce amount of moments, he was high on life. He wasn't tormented or afraid. He was invigorated. And it was all over. The wolves surrounded Lexa. They put their paws on her back and a green burst of energy surrounded them. He could see her wounds heal in real time. They were trying to save her. But it wasn't enough. As the dust and dirt settled, he could see her facing him. Her snout was mangled down to the gums built over the bone. The monstrous mosquitoes and evil essence feeding on her face faded like smoke, revealing more hideous infected wounds. One of her entire cheeks was missing. Another one of her incisors was gone. Half of her gums were rotted and the hair on her head and neck was falling out. Now so close, he could see that she was never winning. She was too wild to know how badly she was losing. In a way, the bloodworm throwing her off was merciful, because if she stayed up in the trees, the thing's cruel magics would have ate her down to the brain and never stopped. She panted in the dirt. Her yellow glowing eyes glossed over and she whined. She was looking right at him. The bloodworm cackled and began racing down the tree, eager to finish the battle and have its meal. It was growing. Almost instinctively, Amaru knew it was because of Lexa's blood. As it spiraled down the tree it lengthened. Dense muscles expanded its girth. The last vestiges of its human elements faded as its spinal wound became an aspect of its anatomy. The blood spikes erected from its back lengthened and curled into chitinous vermilion spider limbs. Its black eyes popped and warmed over with flesh as its nose expanded into a collection of sensitive holes where more hideous fat mosquitoes were freshly born from shadowy eggs. Like Lexa, who came as a girl and grew to a beast, the bloodworm came as nightmare and evolved into abject terror before their very eyes. It hit the ground on blood-spiked legs and hissed from an insectoid breeding ground of a face. The wolves growled, still healing Lexa. Time seemed to slow as Amaru became hyper-aware of his surroundings. Hey, Amaru turned and found a familiar face, or lack thereof, standing beside him. The man he saw in his dreams. The hooded man who spoke with Ms. Marcos and referred to himself as a mage. An ascended one. Wesley. He came again as a sort of apparition. Ghostly in his near-translucent presence. I'll be quick. You're all they've got. But that's more than enough. You're an Araun. A warrior. You, can't always tell, because you're weakened. Bound. By me. At Firetong's request. But you're old enough now. You don't need it. Wesley dug into his long coat and pulled out a bundle of fur bound by a string. It looked familiar somehow. Just say the word. And you're free. Free to fight at your fullest. Free to feel the world as it is. Free to see it all. Free to rage. Wesley said. Amaru grabbed at the bundle of fur only for his hand to phase through the image. Wesley laughed. That's the spirit. Go raise hell. It's what your father would have wanted. Wesley grinned as he ripped the string off the bundle of fur and let the strands blow in the wind. Almost immediately a chasm was formed. Or released. Or healed. Something great changed within and outside of Amaru. The world gained a new sheen. The skies held new levels and details. The weight of existence doubled as fresh concepts flourished in an instant. It wasn't beautiful, it was terrifying, and he couldn't process it because the evolved bloodworm was on the move. Quickly, he was reminded of that feeling. Lexa was doing it, fighting the fear, giving him peace. And now his fears were about to kill her. His peace was so close. Just to be taken from him. There was nothing left to do but follow the instinct. There was nothing left to do but to rage. No fear, no hesitation. Only, Amaru was on the move before he knew it in a burst of speed that cracked the earth. The evolved bloodworm skittered after the wolves and wounded werewolf, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Amaru sped up the process and met the monster halfway. It rose up with its pincer legs raised to run through his defenders. Amaru appeared in a blur of movement. Just as the red spikes came down, he caught them with his bare hands. The bloodworm hissed in his face. A face of sunken flesh over a near-deteriorated human skull from the bugs birthed inside. No fear, only rage. Amaru gritted his teeth. His lip bled from the fangs growing. His hands burned from the nausea flowing. A tingling sensation spread from his spine. He let it take him over. The bloodworm strained. His grip tightened. His body grew. Muscles bulged. Bones broke. Fur sprouted. The bloodworm's pincer limbs cracked like glass under pressure. One moment its assault was being held back by a boy. The next it was standing face to face with a 9-foot-tall brindle-furred beast of wolven origin. Amaru didn't howl. He ripped the bloodworm's legs out and ran them through its stomach. Yo, sorry for the wait. I hope you enjoy this chapter. Did some backstory building here and future build up for our mage. There will be a big explanation of things in the chapter after this one, so I'll do my best to get that out ASAP. Also, I took some of my own ideas and applied them to the bloodworm. I hope you didn't find it lame or confusing. That too will be explained since I don't expect anyone to know what it even is beyond what's been said. Let me know what ya think so far and thanks for reading. TableTopSlop creators' thoughts. 3 comments 0 vote. 13. Beast on Blood. A hybrid fiend versus the wolf-born Garou of rare birth. An Araun, a warrior that had long been hunted out of existence. The collective amount of rarity in the small forest was nothing short of astounding. The two outliers, Omegas, fought like they held a grudge over lifetimes. They fought with ferocity. The evolved bloodworm stomped and stabbed at him. Amaru moved as a blur of fur and fang, phasing in and out of sight with explosive bursts of speed to avoid and blitz the creature on fresh legs. He ran his claws through its fatty body and felt it heal over even while he was still cutting deep. Garou blood did numbers for the bloodworm. It made Amaru move faster, knowing, if the creature got a bite of him, things would grow grim. And that was just it. Knowing. He knew. He had instinct that flowed at the back of his mind like thought. He had thought. Partial and fractured, but he was present. The bloodworm jumped on its blood spider limbs to pounce on him out of starved frustration. Amaru wanted to jump as well and sink his claws into the creature. He stopped himself with a shake of his head and ran ahead, clutching an imaginary ball like he was running a pick-6 straight to the end zone. Imagining the football field helped him focus. Seeing a giant monster on the imaginary field only made it seem more real. He ran forward at a dash. The bloodworm landed behind him. His ears twitched as he heard it spin around before he could. He lost that battle. The war was far from over. Quickly, without thinking, he jumped, back flipping over the charging fiend to land near its flank on all fours. He snarled as he pounced on the creature. As soon as he landed on its spine-exposed back, he sprinted up to its head and slashed into its last humanoid appendage. He cut deep and swung hard, feeling deteriorated skull fragments clump under his nails and flesh plop on the ground in the distance. Almost immediately after, a swarm of evil glowing mosquitoes and smoke flew from the wounds after him. He expected it. He bit his own tongue to avoid the bloodlust clouding his mind. He could still remember what the magical insects did to Lexa. Wildly, he side-flipped off of the creature and avoided the swarm. The cloud hovered and chased after him. The sky called to him. Or more accurately, the things waiting there did. He took off at a sprint, pulling the enemies away from Lexa and the wolves. With a single leap, he cleared 20 feet and dug his claws into the thick bark of a tree. He climbed expertly with 3 swarms chasing behind him. Their incessant buzzing was deafening to his sensitive ears. He ignored it, shaking off the sound as he flipped around branches and zigzagged from tree to tree. They neared, reaching his feet almost before he reached the top of a thin oak and jumped straight into the sky. From there, he turned and roared at the swarms as hawk spirits formed in his wake and dive-bombed the swarms. With massive fiery talons they tore apart the swarms and evaporated the evil magics with the purified essence of Gaia. As they passed by, they whispered in his ears in ancient feral languages. He didn't listen. He was too busy being terrified of falling over 150 feet into a bed of jagged stones rolling through the forestry. He fell as the hawk spirits tore apart the swarms. He snarled and reached for the branches that he blew past in a panic. It was useless. As he fell, he noticed a hawk spirit diving with him. He heard its ancient tongues, spoken in words of the wind and skies. Of rain and snow reflecting the lights of the world. He listened. As he fell, he shut his eyes and listened. Gnosis flowed and collected around his back. His fur morphed into dense dark feathers as massive hawk wings unfurled from his back and caught hold of the midnight winds. As if he'd always had the wings of a hawk, he spun through the forestry to chase down the bloodworm. It fled in its weakened state. Its head, the breeding ground, was still healing with glowing tendrils of blood and evil viscera. With a heavy flap of Amaru's wings, he dashed after the fiend. Hawk spirits followed, his own spiritual swarm of earthly origin to combat the evil filth ahead. The bloodworm jumped up to climb a tree, unknowing of what was coming. Amaru's tackler's instincts overrode his bestial ones as he speared the bloodworm, ducking low to drive his hulking shoulder into the fiend's ribs. With his built-up speed and mass, he blew past the fat and foul blood until he felt bones snap. They went down in a mess of and things better left unsaid. Amaru fought hard, but the massive worm kicked him off with a stab of its remaining blood limbs. He crashed back first into a tree at the edge of the forest. A mountainous stone valley rose in the dark behind him. His bell was rung. His vision shook, causing him to see the creature rise in flashes. He could feel his flesh and muscle knitting itself back together. His wings were gone. The hawk spirits came and went like the winds. But he could still hear the ancient language. Different now. Harsh and jagged with crumbling cadences and booming hallows. Like a cave. He turned his head and looked back at the mountain region rising behind him. There were figures looming there. Giant stone titans of spiritual essence and golem-looking creatures with one glimmering eye. They were old, as old as the earth, and speaking to him. Speaking power into his limbs. Into his hands where the weight of the mountain rested. Gnosis took the round rocky shape of stone around his hands. In his head, instinctively, he knew it was another gift. Taught by the stone titans. The earthly elementals. This time, a word followed. Avalanche. The ground rumbled, fracturing the bloodworm's balance as it closed in on him. Weakly, he stood, struggling to maintain the spiritual weight of the mountain behind him. Avalanche. Small stones rolled down the mountain and fell at his feet. The elementals chanted, screaming to be released upon the evil. Amaru snarled and squatted low like he was ready for a personal record in the weight room. The Gnosis brightened around his hands as he rose up and reached for the sky. The weight was unbearable. He closed his hands into fists and threw them down to the ground, triggering a full-scale avalanche to fall down onto the bloodworm. It was cataclysmic. Massive boulders and toppled logs fell from the mountain. Currents of thick black mud and soot crashed and flowed through the forest. All around Amaru. The bloodworm tried to evade by jumping up into the trees only for the boulders to knock them over. The bloodworm screamed as it was taken over by the violent downward flows of nature. By the time it was over, the forest looked more marshy as waters rose up past his ankles. It was done. The early morning sun was just beginning to rise. He was so exhausted he could feel his knees throb. He huffed, looking down at his hands in partial disbelief. But more so understanding. The missing link of it all was that he was supposed to be this. The visions. The anger. The senses and bursts of strength. The loneliness. A tear rolled down his snout. Something in the distance huffed. He looked up and found a griffin standing across from him. A great untamable spirit. On all fours, it was easily 10 feet tall with massive hawk wings and a feathered bird head of ancient origin. Its leonine body was robust but agile with thick tendons rippling with power. It was violent even in stillness. Unfathomably real even in transparent spiritual form. Instinctively, Amaru bowed. Rushed movement had him raising his head to find the griffin was gone. In its place, two women waded through the shallow waters brought from the landslide. They sported short haircuts, tattoos, no clothes and lean muscle. One of them carried Lexa over her shoulder. They gave a bow to Amaru. Your first change was as any Around-born Garos should be. Mr. Watanokami will be pleased, the darker-skinned woman said. Her accent was West African. The woman to her left spoke then. We'd celebrate you both right this moment if we could, but the motel was attacked. We must go before Pentex operatives triangulate our location. Amaru tried to speak, finding it difficult in his wolven form. The darker-skinned lady held up a hand. All you need to do is follow us back to the motel. No one of worry is present. You won't trigger the delirium either. It's safe. We all survived, as the Garou always has. Let's go. This time, Amaru followed without hesitation. He knew he was among his own. For the first time in his entire life it felt like. As he headed through the marsh, he passed the remains of the bloodworm. It was left impaled by a dozen wooden shards and smashed by boulders all along its length. And it wasn't much of a worm anymore. It was, well, it was unrecognizable. And dead. No, it was defeated. By him. Any urge to howl that Amaru had vanished when he exited the forest and found the motel was a crime scene straight out of a horror movie. Windows were beat in. Blood and viscera dripped from ceilings. Bullet holes smoked through walls. A few doors were beat off the hinges. Ms. Marcos stepped out of the wreckage with her bags packed and the others followed in her wake, stopping as they saw Amaru and the others. She ran over with the rest of her warrior women of all ages. The fuck happened? A bloodworm, the darker-skinned woman asked before looking back to Amaru. He killed it. He saved Lexa, the other said. Ms. Marcos grinned, let's get the hell out of here. As she walked past them she yelled back, your questions will be answered soon, Amaru. It's official. You're one of us. You're a Garou, a dying breed. How does it feel to be endangered? Good. Yo, let me know what ya think and thanks for reading. Also, I know, Amaru used some high-level gifts here which is unheard of for a first change Garou and there's an actual explanation for that coming soon. It's directly related to the state of the world and I hope you all find it as efficient and fun as I did when I wrote it down on my notes lol. TableTopSlop creators thoughts. 5 comments 0 vote. 14. Where the webs weave. Amaru dreamt of griffins in flight battling against futuristic aircraft while Garou and earthly spirits battled on the ground against tanks and monstrous-looking men toting guns twisted by magic evil. It was a psychotic blend of time, aesthetic and form that looked familiar. No, it looked plausible. He hadn't seen such a thing yet, but it didn't seem so far-fetched that he would. He woke up with a start. With his head on the glass at the front seat of the van they came in. Morning. Sunshine. Ms. Marcos said as they weaved through hideously dense traffic on a highway that seemed to run for centuries. Where are we? Amaru asked. Spider Central. Ms. Marcos answered. The younger girls in the back snarled and made puking noises. Spider Central. Chicago. Lexa said from directly behind him. He eyed her from the front mirror for a moment. She was fully healed, still as dead-faced and emotionless as before. But she looked different, more alive, stronger. Her skin had a darker tan. Her hair had a wilder curl that even a flat iron couldn't tame. Yes, Chicago, Ms. Marcos said. You ever been to the big city? She asked Amaru. No, Amaru said before adding, once, I think. When I was younger, when I was being processed by the state for foster care. Ms. Marcos nodded, of course. They all come through here. All Garou? Amaru asked quickly. Ms. Marcos clenched her jaw. Garou, kinfolk, allies, other Farah. They all get tossed into the spider's web. They stick. They get eaten. Where's the spider? Let's kill it. Amaru said. I'm strong, right? I killed the bloodworm. Ms. Marcos and a few others laughed sadly. The spider is a metaphor for something much greater than some monster like the bloodworm. It's more commonly known as the Weaver. A greater spirit, an entity that represents and is strengthened by control, technology, order in modernity. You can't kill a concept. Ms. Marcos said. Maybe not directly. She smiled and glanced at Amaru. Well said. So, Chicago belongs to this greater spirit. The Weaver? Amaru asked. Ms. Marcos made a kinda sorta gesture with her shoulders as she switched lanes and turned up the music on the radio. Not exactly. It doesn't own Chicago in the literal sense, but the Weaver's hold in large cities is strong. The same way the Wilds is strong in places of nature. Or the Wyrm in places of evil and death. That's the triad by the way, Lexa commented. Ms. Marcos nodded. The Weaver, the Wyrm and the Wild. Order, life and death. They once held and worked with Gaia in peace, but the Weaver bound the Wyrm after growing tired of its order being destroyed by death. As the cycle demands. And here we are, someone mumbled. The apocalypse. You'll find many retellings and interpretations of how we got here. All you need to know is, the triad are at odds with each other. We are children of Gaia, the Wild. As Garou, your sworn enemy is the Wyrm. It exists to destroy Gaia, Earth, and it's doing a damn good job. It's your job to stop that, understood? And I do that by killing monsters? Amaru asked. That's part of the job. As an Araun, it's the one you'll be best at. And the other tribes will respect you for that. My daughter Lexa is a Ragabosh. She exists to question the old ways of our kind. A fire starter. A trickster at heart. Amaru blinked dumbly at her. Araun and Ragabosh are titles that explain what phase of the moon we're born under. The Araun is born under a full moon. They're warriors, leaders in times of strife, and killers of many. Like my mom said, the Ragabosh exists to challenge the status quo. Also known as the patriarchy. For most, Lexa explained. You guys kept saying Araun. Are they special? Amaru asked. I thought all werewolves were sort of born under full moons. Ms. Marcos laughed. Garou, we don't go by werewolf. And we don't need a moon to shift. The moon gives us power, but so do the spirits, and so does our rage. She continued, also, yes. The Araun is the rarest auspice of them all. But I'll leave that explanation to someone more fit to tell it. Not to mention I don't want to overstimulate you. You've had a wild couple of days. School brawl, expulsion, police brutality, lawsuit, vampire battle in a forest. Warrior indeed. The others laughed. Amaru had more questions. He didn't feel overstimulated. He felt fresh, curious and anxious. The latter especially as they finally reached the true entrance into Chicago. Also known as Spider City. It was a massive jutting and jagged tapestry of textile and ocean blue glass. Skyscrapers and industrial high-rises poked the dark clouds. Law enforcement agencies piloted massive jets and drones that weaved through the steel chaos. Railways knitted the city together with speed and iron rods. Billboards gleamed and flashed brightly even in daylight, advertising toys by Avalon Incorporated, cigarettes by Cercinus Brands and some investment firm. There were others, but foul black smoke with red eyes oozed from those specific billboards. Not to mention dark light techno webbing hung from the buildings all over, allowing massive glitching spiders to climb around and keep their webs connected to pedestrians below. Amaru felt sick. He wasn't alone. The other Garou in the van snarled and gripped their seats. Calm your rage, ladies. Unless you want to die as soon as we've completed our mission. Ms. Marcos said. Wait, Amaru asked. What happened to you guys? At the motel, I mean. After me and Lexa, and the other Garou. Ms. Marcos nodded. Cainites. He'd heard them use that word before. Vampires. Lexa clarified. We're allies with one specific clan. The Gangrel. They're much more like us than we'd like to admit. Ms. Marcos said. They can turn into wolves. Lexa said, and speak to animals. We use them for recon and product movement. Ms. Marcos explained. Well, not as specifically. Our pack doesn't interact with Cainites willingly. But an ally does. The one we're taking you to. Mr. Watanokami. Amaru guessed. Ms. Marcos nodded. With his help, the Gangrel have risen in power. A few other clans don't like that. So, they made a move on us. I'll have to report that to him. Do you know who it was? Amaru asked. Ms. Marcos looked up in her mirror to eyeball the women seated behind him. What? Amaru asked. It's nothing. Just, the Araun. We haven't seen one in a long time. I've forgotten how much you're hunters as well as warriors. You chase. In every sense. They hit a stoplight and she stared at him a moment before replying, Clan Tremere. That's who did it. Or at least tried after placing a bane on a Gangrel scout working for us and turning it into a bloodworm. They're not very strong. They're vampires created through means of sorcery. They're hated by the other clans. So naturally, if they kill the Gangrel, who are allied with us, they may one day earn some respect. Double if they kill one of us. They're scary. They should be strong, but they're not. Another said. If they ever learn to stop experimenting on their kind, they probably would be. Lexa added. Okay, maybe this is a lot to take in. Amaru thought to himself. I mean, is it though? It's just everything I've been seeing. I have names now, and the power to do something. They can die. I can K. Oh, this is my favorite song. Ms. Marcos turned up the radio. As if she could read his mind and wished he'd not go down whatever path he was on. They drove deeper into Spider City with the radio blasting and Amaru's mind working to adjust to the new world. All the while, he focused on specific concepts and individuals more so than others. Cainites. The Wyrm. Mages. Mr. Watanokami. The one who was supposed to be answering the most important questions. Like his parents. Firetongue. Or anything else for that matter. Suddenly the drive couldn't end any sooner. Info dump chapter. I hope it wasn't too boring. I just wanted to get some ground rules set as we jump into the next volume, that way we can hit the ground running for the most part. PLZ, leave a review so PPL know what they're getting themselves into, and thanks so much for your support. TableTopSlop creators thoughts. 4 comments 0 vote. 15. Into Inheritance. Tuesday afternoon, October 2, 2125. Chicago, Illinois. Inheritance Industries of the Bronman business conglomerate. They drove for another 20 minutes in Ms. Marco's unmarked van, through a city plagued by a dozen diseases of the spiritual kind. Even more of the physical, as pedestrians sucked on cigarettes spewing foul fumes and drove large cars burning through gallons of caustic diesel. All while passing billboards of business titans buying up land and hosting red carpet events as they gentrified slums and displaced families with real estate loopholes. They passed small patches of green, but most of the forestry was reduced to chlorophyll pods. Black metal cubes filled with green chemicals, fluids meant to mimic trees. Amaru felt his rage rising the longer they spent inside the city of corrosion. But they'd made it. He knew so as more and more billboards began to feature the name and blurred face of one man. A man he'd seen a few times. Not for good reason. Ms. Marcos and her female Garou pack had completed their mission in delivering Amaru to Mr. Watanokami. As he stepped out of the van, he found a massive high-rise looming over him. Made of glass with silver and black steel gilded edges. It was breathtaking even before taking into account the smaller high-rises connected by glass walkways like futuristic spires. It was a castle of the 22nd century. Fit with its banner in the form of thick booming brand labeling at its helm. What he assumed was the Watanokami crest or company logo. It was a black eagle descending on a wolf. It seemed German. He suddenly felt like he was being sent to slaughter. Not really though. The presence of Weaver spirits was calmer. More organized and docile. They weren't fighting with and working alongside the Wyrm spirits. It was more relaxed, but only barely. Also there were a lot of people outside walking dogs. German breeds. Doberman and Shepherds and gigantic wolfish mastiffs. They eyed him and nodded with respect. Hesitantly, he returned the gesture before Ms. Marcos had a hand at his back. Ready. Amaru hesitated as he looked back at the van. This is the place, he thought. The women and girls inside waved and flipped him off. Lexa was at the front seat. What are you looking at? He didn't have the same answer as before. He simply nodded in goodbye. She returned the gesture before rolling the window up and turning up the music. She likes you, Ms. Marcos said as she led him up the massive cement steps leading up to the building. She does. My daughter, Dot, has a distaste for men. For good reason. Her generalization of them as predators, oppressors and vultures comes from a troubled past. I found her on a raid in Brazil. Not my story to tell. The point is, none of us have seen her work with or help a boy or man ever. She trusts you. Never betray the trust of a black fury. Understand? I haven't fully understood anything since I woke up this morning. Ms. Marcos laughed. You understand. She adjusted her black blazer and tightened her ponytail as they reached the door. Two armed guards on each corner remained motionless with their attack dogs as Amaru and Ms. Marcos stepped through the revolving doors. Inside was just as grand as out. The afternoon setting sun beamed through the windowed walls. The lights shined on and reflected off of men and women in silk and satin suits. But it wasn't the regular suit and tie for them all. Many men wore sleeveless tunics over white button-ups and overalls. Again, culturally German. He even saw the flag waving beside the American flag from window borders. Massive 200-inch TVs played promotional material in English and German. Slides and video excerpts of the company's successes flashed by in quick succession. Speaking of backing successful law firms, professional athletes, Olympians, leading in scientific discoveries relating to the human body and dog breeding. Their scope was massive, and it was all connected to a private school. Bronman Academy. He saw it through the glass walls at the back of the building. You seem confused, Ms. Marcos said. For someone with a Japanese last name, he sure does flash a lot of German love. Amaru said. There's a reason, and in public, do not call him by that name. Call him Braun, Ms. Marcos whispered. Amaru nodded. He remembered the name. It was on the billboards on the way there. He didn't like what he saw attached to the name. They walked down more hallways until they reached an elevator. She clicked the upward arrow button. Amaru shivered as he heard Weaver spirits skitter along the elevator wires above him. When the doors opened, a large spirit spider sat in the back corner. Fucking hell. Amaru jumped. Act normal, warrior. Ms. Marcos chided him before pulling him inside. Amaru entered and shut his eyes to calm himself, remembering he was there for answers. Among the spiders and spirits. They rose 40 floors before stopping at the top floor. The door opened and gave way to a single room. It was large, but not breathtaking like the rest of the building. There was no promotional materials or German flags. Just a desk, workout equipment, a map of the city on a whiteboard and a man staring out of a window. Braun, Ms. Marcos said as they stepped out. Anastasia. Braun replied. His voice was smooth. It didn't really fit his build. Even in a suit, Amaru could tell he was densely muscled. His traps were creeping out of his collar. He could see the man's tricep veins through at least 3 layers of clothing. He turned around. He was handsome, clean-cut, no beard, trimmed brows, dark green eyes and pale skin with long jet black hair combed into a slick back. Amaru suddenly understood his last name. And first name. And it made as much sense as it didn't. He was mixed, visibly Eurasian, Japanese and German. For reasons unknown to Amaru, he publicly leaned into his German side, and privately embraced the Japanese. Even when he spoke, Amaru could hear the accent switch forcibly. This is the Around. Amaru and Ms. Marcos turned around to find a woman leaning against the wall next to the elevator behind them. She was thin and tall with intense dark eyes and platinum blonde hair. It is Ms. Marcos said, delivered as promised. He looks young and scared. She said, he killed a bloodworm, scrotum sucker. Ms. Marcos replied. Braun smiled and laughed faintly, drawing everyone's attention. He took it as if it was expected. The tribes are a paradox, aren't they? Amaru hesitated, realizing the business titan was talking to him. He went on. I mean, the Garou was made for one purpose. Saving Gaia. They're supposed to be heroes, saviors. But they're all made and beholden to slightly different powers. Just enough to hate, to kill, each other. Why would the Garou be made in such a way? Why is it you? Amaru asked. Braun raised an eyebrow in confusion. I see you out there. On the big screens. On advertisements. Making big deals. Taking down ghettos and refurbishing them into industrial districts. Everything you've done has damaged Earth. I mean, Gaia. What is this? A joke? Is it a test? Amaru turned and faced Ms. Marcos. She grinned as she eyeballed Braun. He's on point, isn't he? Braun asked her. Like a god's damn spear. Ms. Marcos said. Braun took a deep breath and ran his hands through his hair. Mr. Ma, come join me at the window. It's really a terrible view. Amaru only came over because of the last bit of his words. And he did so hesitantly as the day began to go from confusing to alarmingly underwhelming. He had an image of the Garou after hanging with Lexa, Ms. Marcos and her band of liberators. They were warriors, as much as they gave him the label. They traveled cities fighting with their hands and with pen and paper. They saved his life. They slaughtered dark spirits. And then they ended it by delivering him to a business tycoon. He stood beside Braun. The man smelled like designer colognes soaking designer fabrics. You see it, don't you? Braun said. You see everything that's got a hold on this city. On this planet, even. Amaru didn't speak. Did you know not all of the Garou can see it so clearly? I've run into some that can't see it at all. They're blind, Braun explained. Amaru was new to it all, but if seeing was believing, he couldn't imagine the confused hell that came from not seeing and only feeling. As more of the Umbra is destroyed, our connection goes with it. Braun explained. Amaru looked over at him. Braun was right, it was a terrible view. Up so high, he felt like one of the spiders. Our clouds of dark essence exhaust. You don't trust me, do you? Braun asked without looking at him. He kept his hands behind his back as he gazed. You find it wrong. To be delivered, like an item, to me. A man of wealth and community dismantling for the sake of profit margins. Yay, Amaru said. Braun nodded. Can I ask you a question, Mr. Ma? Go ahead. Are you familiar with the samurai? Isn't everyone? Amaru asked. Braun chuckled. Fair. Now I'll ask another. Do you know why the samurai sported masks resembling demons and monsters? Amaru thought on it for a while. He didn't know, but the thought of telling someone like Braun that he was ignorant to the subject irritated him. So he fought. As any Around did. Intimidation. Amaru said firmly. Braun blinked once. Wrong. Fuck. Braun continued. By word of human historians, you're right. By human record, you're right. But there are few humans in this room. For some reason, Amaru caught a chill. The real reason samurai, men like my grandfather, fought wearing the masks of demons and evil spirits is because they fought in great wars. Wars please the Wyrm. Banes and dark spirits swirled in their clashes. There were those that could see them among the samurai. And they knew, to keep their ranks safe, they had to blend in. To look like the spirits of death and destruction, they too had to wear its face. So you're saying you aren't actually as you appear? Amaru asked. No, I am all you see. Braun said, but it is still a mask. One I wear for a purpose. Do you know what it's like to sacrifice for a purpose? No, I'm told you do. Braun said. Amaru looked at him. You sacrificed yourself to save Lexa. The term warrior and hero are only separated by the context of time, you know. Braun replied. Amaru didn't have a reply for him then. You and I aren't very different. Braun said suddenly. Is this the part where you tell me you sacrifice yourself for others too? Amaru asked. Braun shook his head. No, that's where me and you differ. I'm logic. You're instinct. That felt disrespectful, Amaru thought. Look at all this. Braun referred to the ground they stood on and the buildings connected outside the window. The academy even. I didn't sacrifice myself for this. Not really. And I can't do it now. There's too many depending on me. Even still, to build this, to better the chances of the Garou and many other Pharaoh, I have sacrificed so much. Countless lives. Countless opportunities. Everything. And that is a language that both you and I speak. Even if it's twisted in dialects of logic and instinct. We are similar. Amaru hated to say in a weird way he understood. Just remember, all the cars, money, cutthroat business decisions and deals I make, are a face I wear among the spirits of destruction, so that I too don't end up destroyed. I'll make us lose the battle if it guarantees our victory in war. Braun said. Does it? Amaru asked. Braun looked at him. It didn't at one time. But you're here now. All I ask is that you join us. I can give you answers. I can teach you about your kind, your tribe. I can give you strength. I can give you family. No more house hopping. No more aimlessness. You're a warrior, Amaru. A general. And we have many soldiers of Gaia that need you and those like you. A moment of silence spread. I'm not going to that uptight preppy academy. Amaru suddenly said. Braun smiled. Remember, Mr. Masks. We all wear them. I'm not going. I'll give you one less class than everyone else. No. 2. Braun. Half days. Braun said as he clenched his jaw. All right. Amaru said. Braun turned and looked at him. Amaru side-eyed him. I take it you've never been poor. Or without family. I'll let you in on a secret. Kids see that and attack. I fight back. The half days are for your benefit so that I don't rip your school in half. My father was Garou, a Shadow Lord Alpha, who later became a Haken tribe leader. His name was Luther the Cold One. My mother was human kinfolk of the Eastern Beast Courts. A daughter of a high-ranking member. To infiltrate their numbers, he manipulated and subjugated her until she pushed out 2 children unwillingly. I was one of them. I was abandoned. You were an orphan. Amaru didn't give a damn about Shadow Lords, Haken or Beast Courts after hearing that. We are similar. Braun said again, and much like me, you've come into wealth quite quickly. Suddenly he cleared his throat and spoke up. Sophia, the papers please. The woman once standing behind Ms. Marcos shuffled over and handed Braun a roll of newspaper. He handed it to Amaru. Amaru unfurled the paper and found a picture of the police station detainment center back home. The headline read, Favard Juvenile Corrections and Processing Department torn to shreds by illegal acts of abuse, money laundering, evidence of gang activity and racist cop militia conspiracy. Star football player awarded $2 million in landslide lawsuit. It was then that Braun pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to Amaru. Congratulations. You're a millionaire. Braun continued looking out the window. As if Amaru's life didn't suddenly change, again. What? Don't worry, I already took my cut. Ms. Marcos suddenly said, I'll be heading out now. Braun, we gotta talk bloodsuckers when you're not window sulking. Understood. Braun said. Going on any runs tonight? Ms. Marcos asked as she headed for the elevator. We have a dinner tonight. Braun said. So, you're definitely going out. Got it. I'm coming. Braun nodded. Amaru watched Ms. Marcos step into the elevator. She waved. Amaru returned the gesture before she disappeared behind steel sliding doors. Braun turned away from the glass. So, Mr. Will you join us in our war against the Wyrm and toxic traditionalism? Will you help us save the world? Sign me up. Braun nodded. Signings will come later. As my ward, you'll need to look the part first, so we have to go shopping. Unfortunately, this world processes the mask better than the true face. I've never been shopping. I guess I've got the money for it now. Amaru said. Braun shook his head. That's investment money. Stocks are expensive when they matter. What's a stock? Amaru asked. Braun shook his head. That will come later. Let's move. We have a set schedule. They headed for the elevator. Sophia, hold down the fort. Braun said. Amaru walked with him asking, so, you assumed I'd join you? I'm very persuasive. Braun said casually. You seem more arrogant. Amaru replied as they entered the elevator. Arrogance is charming. Do you have a slick answer for everything? Amaru asked. It's part of the game. Braun adjusted his cuffs. You'll learn to play. I play just fine. Braun smiled faintly. They watched the floors lower on the panel board in silence for a while. Amaru took the time to look at him again. Every inch seemed calculated. His breaths, his blinks, his movements all felt just sort of unnatural. A performance. All for the sake of saving the world apparently. Braun. Yes. I'm sorry about your dad, and your mom. Quote. I don't know mine, but, anyway, for what it's worth, even if you were just an evil business tycoon, you're still doing much better than him. Amaru said. Braun's eyes went wide for a moment too long, making Amaru think he caused the man to have a stroke. Then, the floor reached one. His mask was back on with a smooth dead half smile. Even so, he reached out a hand to Amaru. They shook up as the door opened and entered the weird world together. Yo, made some big references here that kind of give light to what kind of story I'm writing here and what elements of the werewolf the apocalypse mythos I'll be focusing on. Eastern. With that being said, I hope you can enjoy. By the next chapter of this volume 1, think many of you will be able to tell what dynamic this is similar to and what character I took inspiration from when creating Bron Watanokami. I hope y'all like him. He's complex, which I feel will work with Amaru's brutal simplicity. TableTopSlop creators' thoughts. 2 comments 0 vote. 16. The price of ancestry. Bron led Amaru out of the building at a brisk pace. Somehow, seamlessly, he served nods, handshakes and quick charming quips to passing business associates and obvious fans along the way. It didn't take long for Amaru to come to one realization. Bron is a celebrity. As a result, they didn't exit out of the door Amaru and Ms. Marcos came in. They left through a side door that took them to a massive cement garage car lot. It was lined with luxury and refined steel. I don't drive much. This is exciting, Bron said. You don't? Amaru asked. I don't support texting and driving. So no. Why did you say it like it's politics? Amaru asked as they looked at all the luxury and supercars. Isn't everything? Bron asked. Amaru shook his head. Which one's yours? The question is which isn't. Bron looked around and scratched his chin. You're kidding. Rarely. Bron replied before saying, you pick. Not a car person. Then it should be easy. Bron replied. Begrudgingly, Amaru pointed out a muscle car on the left side of the lot. For no reason other than it being his favorite color. Green. Dark. Forest green. In the shadows of the lot it almost looked black. Ah, the Ford Mustang Mach 2 model with a wide reinforced alloy body and fang kit. Also known as, the Ford Mustang Dire Wolf. Fitting. Ironic. Hiding in plain sight. Bron added before pulling out his phone and typing away through a few apps. Suddenly the car's lights blinked twice. Weaver spirits crawled in and out of the hood as the V16 engine growled to life and the car drove out of its parking spot and parked beside them with the doors opening slowly. I didn't even know cars could do that. Amaru thought before Bron motioned for him to sit inside. He did. Bron quickly walked around to the driver's seat and hopped in. When he raised his hands to place them on the wheel, his sleeves pulled back and revealed tattoos covering his arms. On his left arm, they were German. On the right they were Japanese. Full sleeves. Bron took notice of Amaru's gaze as he drove the car out of the lot. Ancestry is important, especially for the Garou. You'll find out just how much when you meet the others in our pack. Or our tribe for that matter. They exited the garage and midday sun spilled in through the windows. People spotted him in the driver's seat and pulled out their phones. Quickly, he pressed a button on the control panel beneath the radio and suddenly the windows were at a max percentage tint. Another casually world-changing concept for Amaru. He focused. What are the tribes? What are they for if packs exist? Ms. Marcos didn't tell me. Bron nodded. Good. I didn't want her to overload you. Amaru nodded and Bron got into it as they headed down the full streets. Tribes are the family. The breed of Garou you are, in a sense. Tribes come with a totem and array of lower spirits that empower and enlighten you based on your renown or rank within the tribe. Tribes also can intermingle with other like-minded tribes when forming packs. There are 14 known tribes. Currently, there are 7 still functioning. That's a pretty aggressive downsize. Amaru said. You have no idea. Bron sped off down a busy street as the light turned green at a previous stop. Their names are as follows: Black Furies, Bone Gnawers, Shadow Lords, Haken, Silent Striders, Stargazers and the Get of Fenris. What about the others? Amaru asked. The fallen tribes are of very similar beliefs and function. The Uktena, the Wendigo, the Silver Fangs, the Fianna, the Children of Gaia and the Red Talons. Many of them have few final members or one sole survivor, but even that's hearsay for most. For most? Amaru asked. Well, I know one for sure has a singular survivor. Bron started as they rounded a corner, the Red Talons. They have one last tribe member. He's young, direct, violent, rough around the edges and easily offended. Like most Red Talons before him. But he's also self-aware. His instincts go beyond the norm. He's promising. They parked the car and Amaru realized Bron was staring at him. That's my tribe. Bron nodded. You're the last Red Talon alive, Amaru Ma. What happened? Amaru asked. What always happens. War. They were targeted by Pentex. The oil company. Bron didn't speak. He let Amaru come to the conclusion on his own. Oh, damn. All those companies on the big screens, with the Wyrm spirits oozing out of the pictures. They're related to Pentex. Subsidiaries. Braun explained. Cigarette companies, car manufacturers, toy stores, everything they back plays a major role in destroying Gaia. And it's all thanks to the board of directors. They deemed the Red Talons the most dangerous of all the tribes. Where most of us are tainted by the Weaver and living among the people who naturally seem to weaken us, your ancestral tribe lived as they came. For Gaia, for Garou betterment, even if they had their shortcomings, they had the opposite just as much. Amaru didn't speak. Braun let the tension fade. So, my parents were Red Talons. Braun nodded. Yours are Shadow Lords, and Beast Courts. For brevity, sure. Braun nodded. Then, I'm a Shadow Lord now. Amaru asked. Braun shook his head. I'm not even a Shadow Lord. Haken. I'm so confused. Amaru said. We've lost 7 tribes. Do you know what that means for the Garou in a spiritual sense? No. It means chaos. Desperation. The Umbra reflects the physical world. That desperation has led tribes and packs to mix and match. As a result, we are not Shadow Lords or Haken. We're Glass Walkers. Specifically, a pack with connections and influence from all 3. Glass Walkers. Amaru muttered. Glass Walkers are among the most hated of the tribes for our willingness to work with the Weaver through use of technology, human allyship and acceptance of other changing breeds. So you're the most modern group. More or less. We've been that way since our inception. In what is today known as Israel and Palestine. Amaru had more questions about his parents. About the Red Talons as a whole. And the Griffin, and changing breeds. Anyway, we have to stay on schedule. We'll continue our conversation later. We've reached our first stop. Braun rolled down the window. A barber shop loomed over them with golden lettered labeling and marble steps. Amaru looked back at Braun. I appreciate what you've done for me, but I'm not going in there. Why? Because I don't need to cut my hair. Braun clenched his jaw, seemingly not used to outward defiance. Then he blinked in consideration and shook his head. You're right. How foolish. I'm trying to take you to get your hair cut after I just explained your ancestry. Wow. What? You're Native American, like all Red Talons, Mr. Ma. It may not mean anything to your immediate mind, but I almost angered many spirits tied to your blood. I'm sorry. Forgiven. I just don't like the sound of razors by my ear, though. A valid reason for anyone with enhanced senses. Braun pulled out of his parking spot. Amaru left out the part where as a child he remembered getting his hair cut by a man with evil spirit slugs slithering in his dreads. They'd done enough trauma dumping on both sides anyway. The rest of the ride was spent in silence. Amaru had a lot of new information to process. 14 tribes of Garou, all with who knew how many individual packs within. 7 slaughtered by an oil company. An evil entity running an oil company to efficiently continue destroying the earth. Of the 7, was Amaru's own. An explanation for his orphanage. An explanation for his visions. His entire being. A new focus for his rage. They spent the rest of the day shopping. Trying on new clothes, trying out new terms, learning the ins and outs of each other. It felt one-sided, though. Braun's mask never slipped after Amaru spoke about his father. Everything he said felt halfway fake. His words loomed in Amaru's mind then. I'm logic. You're instinct. Amaru assumed it was force of habit taking over and not that Braun would keep simple personal factoids from pack members. After a few hours, Amaru was back in the car with a backseat full of shopping bags. All clothes for all events. Casual, professional, business casual, business professional, high class, low class, luxury, sporting, swimming, skiing. It felt excessive, but Amaru kept in mind that it was all a mask. One he wouldn't keep on like Braun. The sun was beginning to set. Amaru was getting stir-crazy. He wanted to run. He wanted to eat and work and fight and kill another bloodworm. He was practically vibrating in his seat as they passed spirits and people alike. I understand dogs when they see squirrels now. Amaru thought as he gazed out of the window. Slowly, the modernized density of the city faded as they began driving through low-rise ghettos, factory districts and food deserts that reeked of processed meats and body odor mixed with sour ketchup. Where are we doing? Amaru asked. Detour. Braun said curtly. Amaru had another question but stopped as they parked near a cemetery. Spirits of all kinds loomed. Let's go. Braun led him out into the cemetery. Is your mom buried here? Amaru asked in a quieted voice. Braun shook his head. My mother wasn't allowed a cemetery or cremation. She was forced to take her life for betraying my grandfather. She was judged unfairly. But this is not for me. What? Braun came to a stop at a grave at the base of a baobab tree, African origin, with hawk feathers and dream catchers tied to its branches. A panther and wolf paw were etched into the bark hidden behind the stone grave. Here lies a man of many lives. Here lies a man of many truths. A poet, an activist, a Black Panther, a son of a chief, a soldier and a savior. Here lies, the wielder of sword and pen in all their might, Mason x Mason Ma. Bronn handed Amaru his phone saying, when you apologized on behalf of my father, you also told me you didn't know your parents, obviously. So, I'd like to formally introduce you to one of them at least. Amaru took the device and found himself looking at a photo. The man was young, no older than 20. He was dark-skinned with braids, a thick nose, soft eyes and full lips. He also had a scar across his cheek. Visibly mixed race. Amaru now knew he was of African and native descent. Those are all the photos I could find of your father. Mason Ma, later known as Warma. Bronn said. Amaru swiped left. He found the man was now older with a beard and curly afro. He wore dark militant clothing and had a gun holstered on his hip as he stood with a band of men and women wearing the same. The Black Panther Party was a militant, and Marxist, political party known for challenging the government and all forms of civil oppression. They died out with the murder of Fred Hampton. A little over 100 or so years later, and they were born again in light of Pentex and its subsidiaries' oppressive acts and capitalist oversights. Your father was part of that rebirth. He wasn't a leader by any means. He was too young at the time, but he put in good work. How old is he here? Amaru asked. 19. Damn. It's here that he probably had his first change. Bronn said. During a riot. I found an article on it. The Chicago mauling. There was reports of the Black Panthers unleashing rabid wolves and stolen exotic animals to take down the cops and other government officials at a debate stage. It was Mason, my dad. Amaru surmised. Most likely. Because not even 3 months after the date of that riot, your father enlisted in the armed forces. Infantry. Bronn said. Amaru scrolled and found a photo of his father with a unit of soldiers in the Middle East. He probably was given help and guidance from the Silent Striders there. But eventually, he was dishonorably discharged for refusing to follow military chain of command. That's all it says. Bronn said. What about my mom? Amaru asked. Your mother was a wolf. Bronn said. Like most Red Talons, you were lupus born. What? There are 3 forms a Garou can be born as. Homid, human, lupus, wolf or métis. Métis are born and stuck in their Krynos form. They're deformed and hated by most spirits. It's also why it's illegal for you to mate with other Garou by way of the litany. Bronn explained. I was born as a wolf. Amaru said. Bronn nodded. It's how we found you. Who is we? Amaru asked. Firetongue delivered you to us. And by us I mean the Glass Walkers. Wesley helped hide you. He turned you human forcibly and bound your powers. To keep you safe. Until the time was right. Amaru looked at him. Looking away from the grave for the first time. Do you feel like it's the right time? It's the only time we have left. Bronn said plainly. I'll give you 2 a minute. Amaru nodded and Bronn left back to his car. It suddenly felt colder. The spirits loomed. His hands sweat. He scrolled once more and found a blurred image of a massive black wolf with a mane of dreads and yellow eyes. So, you were a civil rights activist turned soldier turned Red Talon Alpha. I don't know how you justified bestiality, or joining the army after learning you were a Garou, but you did it. For so long I was told you were a nobody. An abusive drug addict or psycho locked away somewhere in prison. Somehow it's worse. How am I supposed to measure up to you? I just got expelled. I can't do math. And I have anger issues. But somehow I'm supposed to help save the world. I guess I'll come back and let you know how it's going later. I don't really have anyone else. So, it's nice to meet you, Dad. See ya. Amaru wiped the tear forming in his left eye and left to join Bronn back in his car. He handed him his phone and looked out of the window as he spoke. Thanks, a lot. Bronn started the car. Don't mention it. This is what Pack does. This is how we save the world. With cemetery visits. Something like that. Bronn sped off. Now it's time to get to work. Up above the car, a griffin flew as a massive winged spirit watching Amaru. This chapter was much longer, and heavier, but it felt necessary. Warma was the first character you were introduced to. He was originally going to be the Mick, but it didn't fit as I planned for more of the story, so along came Amaru. Obviously I had a lot of ambitions for him. AJD the story would have been much more politically inclined. There still will be some of that, but it will be mixed with other story beats. A little more power fantasy and kingdom building. Anyway, let me know what ya think and thanks for reading. Also, I tried posting this FIC in the Werewolf the Apocalypse subreddit and oh my god. They're so rude over there, they trashed TF out of me for no reason at all. Was just trying to work with some more lore experienced minds and they were saying I'm writing a trash knockoff and I know nothing. Like. Guys, why are we acting like Silverfangs RN? Anyway, rant over. I'm still having fun so they can go be great elsewhere. TableTopSlop creators' thoughts. 2 comments 0 vote. 17. Home and habitat. Work came in the form of more driving. All the way to the north side of Chicago, where it was all luxury condominiums and mansions built beside obviously government-made lakes. Amaru could see oceanic spirits swimming beneath. They eventually came to a stop in a cul-de-sac absent of massive Wyrm taint and weaver spirits. It was quiet inside and out. On multiple levels. Apparently, it was also home. Amaru knew so when he spotted the German flag waving from the rooftop of the centermost colonial mansion. It was at least 60 feet tall with clean white walls and a black shingled rooftop. The windows were fractured frames of greens and blues that somehow didn't resemble a church. When Braun pulled into the driveway, he was surrounded by 3 men in suits. Amaru tensed. Their pack. It's okay, Braun said before clicking the door unlocked. Quickly and efficiently, they opened up the back door to the Mustang and began taking out Amaru's bags of clothes and heading into the mansion. I can take my own things, Amaru protested from the front seat. Do you know where your room is? Braun asked as he stepped out of the car. All the while he thanked and nodded to the Garou in suits. I can find it, Amaru pressed. We don't have time for that, Braun said as Amaru got out of the car on the other side. We've had time to visit every designer store in the West Side, visit my father's grave and stop to order 8 rotisserie chickens. How do we not have time for this? Amaru asked. Because you need to get showered, shaved and styled before 6. It's 5 right now. The dinner is at 7. Powerful people will be present. You will be scrutinized from the moment you walk in and we can't afford missteps or misunderstandings. So, I will take you to the bathroom where you will be debriefed on tonight's focuses and cleansed to the point of rawness. Understood, Braun explained with so much intensity that a vein bulged in his neck. Amaru growled, all right. Remember, Amaru, masks and sacrifice. Yay. Follow me. Braun led him inside. The mansion was simple, efficient, state-of-the-art. It was a smart house with steel doors on remote control, eye vacuums and security systems buzzed across the polished wood floors. The windows had one-way facial recognition software scanning the diagnostics of every life form, even the grass. As Amaru walked at a brisk pace across the floors, he could feel trapdoors and manufactured alcove entrances give beneath his weight. Many of the rooms reeked of wolf and gunpowder. Many of the weaver spirits were smaller and more organized. Their spiritual webbing held together phones, giving their internet connection a firmer hold. This feels more like a bunker than a mansion, Amaru thought. Braun led him up 2 flights of spiral stairs, past a room where 2 people were definitely having sex, a weight room, a room fashioned like a boxing ring and another room full of individuals on computer. As that, are they playing Earth Blood? Amaru asked. What's that? Braun replied. Never mind. They continued their trek in silence all the way to a massive shower room at the end of the hall where 2 older women awaited them. They wore simple black blouses and slacks. They gave a quick bow to them both. Mr. Ma, this is Eleanor and Aiko. They're great at what they do. The best, even, Braun said. And what is that? Amaru asked. Hair, nails, tailoring, you name it, they do it. Braun said. They're maids. Multi-purpose aides. Braun corrected before clapping his hands. Anyway, I'll leave you 3 to it. Once you're done, they'll show you to your room where you'll get dressed and ready for tonight's dinner. Braun left before Amaru could say anything. Eleanor cleared her throat. Ready? Masks, right, I'm sorry. Nothing. Amaru stripped out of his clothes. The shower was a mess of uncomfortable grunts, gripping hands, flying soap suds, dialect coaching and violent plucking of his brows, sideburns and upper lip. By the end of it, he felt close to transforming. They seemed to notice and briskly escorted him to his room in a towel with his outfit on a hanger laid at the foot of his bed. Thank you, he said. You're welcome, warrior, Eleanor replied. Her age was hard to place for him. She had a few wrinkles but was built like a fighter. Plus her hair looked naturally platinum blonde and curly. Do you all say that? Amaru asked as they headed out. Most will, I'm sure. All kinfolk will. We must acknowledge authority. Many of the other changing breeds will as well, too. It gives us hope. Amaru looked around before asking, what other changing breeds are there? Eleanor and Aiko shrugged. I can't say for sure. Most of you move too fast for me to follow anyway. Now, you should get dressed. Mr. Watanokami will be expecting you in less than 20 minutes. They bowed again and shut the door, leaving Amaru in his new room. New room. There was more familiarity in that term than having a home at all. He didn't even bother looking around. He didn't like to. It made him nauseous. Not to mention he probably couldn't name half of the items or made material in the space, so he simply grabbed his clothes off the bed and went into the bathroom. A bathroom. In my room. This is crazier than the spirit spiders. Amaru said as he dropped his towel. Then he looked in the mirror and nearly had a stroke. He was taller, by at least 2 inches. And he looked older. His features were more defined. Sharper jawline, thicker eyebrow ridge, jutting cheekbones. Combined with his plucked brows, shaved face and touched-up hair, he looked less rugged and more handsome. It was then that he thought back to Lexa in the van. I guess the first change alters the human form too. Cool. Amaru's phone buzzed on the counter suddenly. A text from Braun. All it said was, 5 minutes. Amaru quickly got dressed. It was a simple suit of expensive materials. Black on black with a blue interior on the overcoat and a golden tie. It was then that he realized he'd never put on a tie and had no idea how to. So, he left it. And the top 2 buttons of the button-up were too tight around his neck, which had grown in thickness. So he left that undone as well. He left the mansion at a brisk pace, eager to avoid interacting with any of the other Garou and their Weaver spirit allies. He escaped, but not by his own cool swiftness, as he felt the rooms quiet and adjust in his wake. He could even feel eyes on him as cameras in the corners of walls began to glow and spin to eye him. Leaving felt better than ever. Until he saw the massive armored limo waiting for him. 2 men in suits nodded as his approach as he walked down the driveway of performance motorcycles and trucks to enter the limo. He mumbled thanks as he slid into the leather seats inside. Due to his nose, he wasn't surprised to find the dark leather interior was occupied by more than one individual. Beside him, Braun sat wearing a classic suit with freshly gelled hair and a shaved face. At the seats with their backs to the car windows, a man barely older than Amaru sat with a computer in his lap. Across from him, 3 women sat with phones in their hands. Mr. Ma, I see you made some adjustments to your suit. Braun said. I did, Amaru replied. In abandoning the stricter and constraining elements of his attire, he leans more towards exuding an air of relaxation, excitement and carefree attitudes. This could make tonight's networking ventures more seamless. One of the women on her phone said. Amaru looked from her to Braun. It could also make people think he's unrefined, wild and violent. Another one of the women said. As the car started up, he introduced them. Amaru, I'd like for you to formally meet a few of my most trusted pack members. The women to my left are some of the greatest minds of their age. Triplets. Luna, Stella and Nova. They didn't bother looking up as they said hello in near electronic unison. Hey, Amaru said. They were visibly identical triplets. They had the same dark brown hair, pale skin and slight shapely builds. The only difference was the frames or lack of their glasses. Luna had circular frames, like the moon. Stella had jagged edges, like stars. Nova didn't have glasses, and her eyes seemed just a shade brighter than the other 2. They're our modern scouts, Braun explained. Unlike most other Garou, we fight a war on many fronts. One of which being the modern. We follow the money, we track the numbers. Find out where it leads. How we can use it to our advantage. They watch all things from the stock market to notable social network activity, and we use it to help formulate mission focuses with the different houses of the Glasswalkers as a whole. Braun explained. So they work logistics, Amaru said. Only when it's not a full moon. The triplets said in unison. Again. Braun carried on as usual. The man to your right isn't much older than you. His name is Simon Saad, but he goes by Specs. Specs was tall, thin. His skin was tan. He looked Middle Eastern with his hooked nose and curly black hair. He wore a suit as well but was missing the overcoat and had a pair of headphones around his neck. ERHM. Specs. Braun said more firmly. Specs looked up from his laptop. Yes, boss. Braun looked over to Amaru. Specs' eyebrows raised up above the rims of his shades. It's you. Dude, you're a tank. What were they feeding you over in the outskirts? Food, Amaru said plainly. Ah, the good stuff. Do you mind? Specs reached out for Amaru's hand. Amaru grabbed him by the wrist and put his hand back. Yes. Right. The Araun are combative. Or I just don't know you. Amaru replied. Specs considered his words for a moment. That, actually, is true. Almost immediately after he adjusted his glasses. Gnosis flowed around the dark lenses in ocular pulse waves. Technological spirits in the form of wires and grid sequences flashed in the lenses as he looked over Amaru. The same way, Luna, Stella and Nova are gifted with numbers and the internet, Specs is gifted with communion and connection to the spirits of technology. As you can see, I'm sure. Braun explained. Specs was in his own world as he mumbled to himself. The only thing to stop him was the loud honk of a car as it sped past them on the highway. Wow, he yelled, compared to my compiled averages of Garou physical stats, you're in the 94th percentile. Your bone density and muscle content is ridiculous. Even the tendons in your eyes are, compared to humans, you're practically made of steel. Aren't we all? Amaru asked. No, Not anymore. Specs calmed and went back to fiddling with his computer. I'm sure you already know how much pressure will be put on you. But, for what it's worth, from a physical standpoint, and spiritual, you seem built to endure it. Thanks. Amaru said before looking back to Braun. You still haven't told me where we're going. Right. It's a fundraising event. And like all fundraisers, it doubles as a networking expo where a dozen founding families and old money talking heads will swarm. There will be a strong Wyrm presence. I need you to calm your rage. AMD remain calm no matter what you see. Why? Amaru asked. Because it will be taken care of. But the message matters. All you have to do is play your role. Braun explained. What's my role? The new son of the city. Smile, shake hands, laugh, be interesting. Pretend you're just as surprised as everyone else when the top floor of the building goes up in flames and a business oligarch related to an old Pentex subsidiary is abducted. Pretend you don't know about an illegal auction taking place that will involve selling the plans to staged arson and deforestation jobs that will destroy native wolf populations up north and plots of protected ancient wildlife habitats for the sake of oil and urbanization, and awakening an ancient bane that could swallow Wisconsin whole. Whoa, hold on. Just smile, warrior. You can bare your fangs for their true purpose in time. Remember, Mr. Masks. Amaru took a deep breath as the limo came to a stop before a great skyscraper of golden framing and spotless glass. Cameras flashed from outside the embroidered red carpet walkway. Sports cars revved their expensive engines spewing foul fumes. Amaru raged, but it was almost untraceable behind his newly formed mask. Let's get into it. Chapter was on the slower side with a sudden pickup at the end. Hope ya don't mind. Anyway, let me know what ya think and thanks for reading. Next chap will be out tomorrow. TableTopSlop creators' thoughts. 0 comments, 0 vote. 18. Mask up. In spite of all the new experiences Amaru was delving into, the vibe of the current events wasn't one of them. As weird as it was to say, to feel, being thrown into the fray of camera flashes, wondering gazes, and objects of luxury beyond his understandings wasn't new. Because at the end of the day, it was still just that. Being thrown into the fray. Being pressed and overwhelmed and scrutinized and objectified by people he'd never seen. It was just like football. Just like any big game. Like the first tryout. Like his first days in new schools the literal second he started puberty. Eyes. Camera flashes. You play ball, boy. You've got some arms on you. Where are you from? It was all the same. The same experiences, the same looks only through a lens that was so many tax brackets above him it operated on money printed in heaven. If that was a thing in his new shape-shifting grimdark existence. Only now, he had to smile and nod and wave. He began to exit the car with his facial muscles primed. Specs spoke to him on his way out. Just remember to stay calm. I've already put my contact info in your phone. If you have any questions or worries, text me. I'll keep you updated through messages as well. Oh, also, keep your phone in your pocket when you bump into the bigwigs. Why? Amaru asked. Data collection, obviously. They all do insider trading anyway. We have the moral high ground no matter what we do. Specs winked behind his enchanted shades. Amaru left the car with a newly discomforted hold on his phone as he slid it into his pocket. He stood up to his full height and cringed as the blinding flash of cameras focused on him. Braun was at his side immediately with an arm around his broad shoulders. He smiled and casually conversed with the photographers and journalists. Slowly, Amaru followed suit as best he could. Braun, you haven't aged a day. One of the cameramen yelled from the crowd. Just trying to get like you, Tim. Braun winked playfully. Who have you brought with you today? Another future Olympian. Perhaps a business whiz. Maybe an actor. He's got the action movie hero look. Braun tightened his grip on Amaru. As if he wasn't even close enough to call him by his first name, this one here is a very special guest. But I'm not spilling any beans until I taste some wine and hug some beautiful women. With that they headed inside. As Amaru walked, and tried to avoid the cognitive whiplash he felt from Braun's personality switch, he nodded and shook hands with watching men and women from outside the red carpet leading into the great glass skyscraper. Also known as, the Royal Rise. As said in rose gold words on top of the building. Inside it was as the name stated. Royal. On the surface at least. The floor was black marble with flecks of silver and gold that were peppered within the cracks like spatial dust. Servers, men and women in tight-fit exposing suits, walked around carrying platters of rare foods and drinks. Dark energies swirled within them, highlighting how foul and fermented they were with a supernatural rot that made Amaru's blood hot. His phone buzzed suddenly. Quickly, he took it out of his pocket as they waded through the sea of people. His home screen showed a text from Specs. It read, "Don't give in to your rage, aka don't wolf out, aka don't transform, aka don't turn the party up." Keep it calm and collected, country boy. We play by apocalypse rules, and that puts us in a serious deficit. Quote. Easier said than done, Amaru thought. He looked up from his phone to find a server coming to a stop in front of him. She was blonde with vibrant green eyes, unblemished skin and a black dress that was so explicit, she probably would have seemed less explicitly naked. She also wore a crown, keeping up with the company's namesake. Oh, a handsome knight, who seems just a bit parched. Will you take a drink from your queen? She exaggerated her mannerisms and fluttered her long fake lashes. Somebody get her a gig. One of the many suited men mumbled as he passed by behind her. She winked at him as a few others laughed before returning her attention to Amaru. He smiled faintly. No thank you, I'm underage. She seemed bothered only for a moment before returning to normal. Can't be by much, I won't tell. Come on champ, take a swig. It'll put some hair on your chest. Braun was at his side slapping his back like a father he never had. Or knew. A few nearby spectators laughed as Amaru grabbed the glass of wine. The glass was hot, burning almost, but it entered him with a foul coolness. Like a stream of shit. As he looked at the wine in the glass he blinked twice upon realizing the sight of hundreds of squirming little black smoking worms. Wyrm taint. Another Pentex subsidiary I bet. They really spread their corrosion everywhere. Even in a drink Braun is telling me to consume at a party. Peer pressure doesn't move me. Amaru looked up at Braun again. He nodded. Come on, it won't ruin your perfect GPA. He winked at an onlooker. Then it clicked. Masks. Wear it. Don't be it. Amaru braced himself and brought the glass to his lips. The golden fluid slithered down the crap-quality glass cup. For a fraction of a second, it felt like everyone's corrupted gaze fell on him. Welcoming him. Embracing him as the wormish larva nestled in his lungs and gut. Only he didn't swallow. He faked the sip and following cough. Braun helped make the acting passable by drawing everyone's attention to him with a cheer and clap. All the while he seamlessly switched cups with Amaru. Suddenly his glass was half empty and everyone was satisfied. He felt a considerable amount of tension leave the air. And then he realized how outnumbered they were. Everywhere. Braun patted him on the back. You're doing great. Keep it, he whispered. So Amaru did. He walked through the crowd, holding small convos and answering questions where he could. His antisocial nature was hard to fully mask, but it was easily believed due to his position as new kid on the block. Eventually they made it to the front of what he learned was a crowd, where a stage and podium sat with a big sign that read, Royal Rise Fund Hunt. All around the sign, sponsors and everyday brand names were written like a cloud of gnats. A man suddenly took the stage. He was mundane. Short hair, thick mustache, beer belly strapped into his satin suit. He smiled cordially as he took a silver spoon to his glass. The sound echoed. Slowly, everyone quieted. The man began to speak. Hello and good evening, everyone. As you all know, my name is Jeffrey King, patriarch and face of King Breweries and Distillery. As the partner of the Royal Rise and this event, I'd like to thank you all for attending. You're all guaranteed stock in my company and a keg to take home on the house. Spread it far and wide. The crowd raised their drinks in agreement. Amaru found himself being bumped by Braun, who was reminding him to raise his drink. Amaru did so. This is definitely a cult. Amaru thought as he raised his drink. Tonight we'll have a number of activities, think tanks and gatherings planned where all your fundraising goals will be focused. All I ask is that you stay hydrated and have a good time. The crowd agreed. He held up a hand then, and before we begin, we have one more willing to bravely take the stage after the king. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you, Braun. Braun set his drink on a platter where a server stood at his side. Amaru did the same as Braun motioned for him to follow. He tried not to sweat as he made his way up to the podium, but the stakes were becoming daunting. He said this as someone who'd killed a bloodworm. 2 Garou in a luxury high-rise full of Wyrm tainted ale and enough old money to predate all 50 states. As he reached the top stage and looked over everyone with their foul drinks, he fought off the urge to transform. He tried to ignore how Gaia died beneath the building's corrosive weight as Braun began to perform. Welcome to the stage by a king. I think it's safe to say I've made it. Braun held up a glass, as if he didn't slyly try to get rid of the last. The crowd chuckled. Now, I don't know about you all, but I'm ready to get this night started, so I'll be quick. You all know me for my Guardian-style investments and business in the betterment of young men in America. That hasn't changed, but evolved. Tonight, I'd like to introduce you all to my ward, Amaru Ma. The crowd cheered, but he could see the faces of many light up. No alias. Amaru panicked. He felt like Braun just ripped his mask off that he only just slid on to remain hidden. They saw the paper. At least a few did. Some looked beyond the paper and learned of his violent school history, he was sure. Amaru prepared for a war with the Wyrm's drunkest in that instant. Nothing came. No slurs, no hateful gazes. Just surprise, forced smiles, clapping. Please, show him a good time and welcome him as one of your own. I have a feeling this one will be special. Braun said. Then they were off the stage and the fundraiser began. People moved like worker ants through the massive crowd to group up at stations and bumped shoulders with higher-ups. Amaru was caught up in observing it all when he noticed eyes on him. As he turned, he found a man standing behind him. He was tall, younger than the others and wearing a cheaper suit. But not by much. Hello, Amaru, welcome into the fold. He held a hand out. Amaru took it. The man raised an eyebrow. That's a tough grip you got there. Football. Yay. Defense. The man smiled. I'm Malcolm Henry. I'm here on behalf of Bradford Incorporated. We work with enhancing the production and success rate of public schools through removing non-profitable participants and injecting monetary boosters. Non-profitable participants. The hell? Amaru's thoughts were cut short as Malcolm continued. Anyway, I understand as a ward of Braun, you're practically the face of his school, but I'd ask that you consider one of our many top-performing schools that have a direct connect to our executive branches at Bradford Incorporated. I understand you've had a bit of a troubled school life. With your experiences and our skill, we could transform the schooling indus. Thank you for your time, but I have to get going. Amaru interrupted on behalf of his other half, doing so and held a hand out. Malcolm smiled and took it. If you ever change your mind or have any questions, call me. Their hands disconnected and Amaru found Bradford Incorporated's business card stuck to his palm. His phone buzzed as the man disappeared in the sea of vultures. He took it out and found a text from Specs. If that card has a number on it, text it right now. What? Why? Pac doesn't ask questions. Especially not a Clea. Do it. #now. Specs texted. Amaru quickly typed in the number and messaged, just checking if this number works, Mr. Henry. He waited. Less than a minute and the bubbling icon of someone texting appeared. Yes. Specs texted as Malcolm replied. This number does in fact work, Mr. Ma. And please, call me Malcolm. His phone screen flickered and Gnosis flowed across the screen, distorting the text and words. Specs texted again, hell yes. I'm in. That's a good hunt, Amaru. We've been at odds with Bradford Incorporated since our inception. Since the Braunmen Academy is basically a public school cosplaying as a private school, Bradford Inc. wants a piece. Like everywhere else, they've bought up all the public schools and repurposed them into Wyrm tainted academic factories for lower learning. They can't spread their influence as far as they'd like because of our existence. And we can't take them out silently because we lack intel. Until now, possibly. I'm sure Braun brought you in just for that. Happy to help, even though I didn't do anything. Stay positive, pup. Don't call me that, Amaru replied. If you can't handle that, how will you survive the hazing? Amaru felt the grip on his phone tighten at the mention of the word. His past as a football player made it traumatic. Come find out, he texted. Specs sent a laughing emoji. Man, I get why Pentex put the Red Talons as top priority. You guys are aggressive. #JK. DON trip me throat out. Amaru shut off his phone. The hashtags were giving him a migraine. When he looked up, he found the crowd had moved. Quickly, he began scanning the area for Braun. It shouldn't have been hard to locate him. He was tall, imposing and devilishly handsome. He was also loud and his false German accent didn't make him any less audibly different. Plus, Amaru had his scent. It was gone. He felt himself begin to grow anxious as people tried pitching their business, ideas and startups to him. He had to leave. His mask cracked once already. It would shatter if he kept hearing the modern nobles talk about cement dumping forests and drying out wasteful lakes. Quickly the ground rumbled. He stopped dead in his tracks. Goosebumps traveled down along his skin. He flinched as a roar shook the skies. Panic filled him as he looked around. No one heard it. They were too drunk, too tainted by the Wyrm. Outside the wall of windows, on the rooftop of a nearby high-rise, he found a griffin perched on the spires like a gargoyle made of spiritual essence. After it roared, it looked up at his building. It was then that an explosion went off and shook the entire high-rise. Everyone screamed as the lights flickered and sprinklers went off. Hairline fractures rippled along the ceiling before it ultimately collapsed. It all faded to black. When Amaru came to his senses, he was under a block of cement and carpet. The smells of blood and death swarmed his senses where the burn of wood and flesh failed. He was sick. He was angry. He froze as movement and snarls shook the grounds. Quickly, he pushed the cement slab off himself. His suit was torn up and burnt, but he felt fine. It reminded him of that car accident he survived when he was 8. He blinked back the traumatic memory and sat up on the even ground. He was at the edge of a battlefield. The top 2 floors of the high-rise had fallen inward, turning the fundraiser grounds into a maze-like battlefield of cement pillars, fires, electrical spams and rubble. In the midst of it all were hideous mutated creatures. Humanoid creatures with fatty slimy skin like a slug and eyes with dozens of slitted pupils. Some had multiple arms while others had glowing hearts that pushed lava-like bile out of their snarling mouths. They all stunk of worm. And fighting them were vigilantes, Amaru thought as he eyed the cloaked individuals. Beneath the cloaks, he saw the gleam of armor and sheathed katanas. On their faces they wore mempo masks resembling the snouts of snarling wolves. Amaru was suddenly thinking back to Braun and his talk about samurai and their masks. He was taken out of his thoughts as a stray Wyrm creature charged him from the backline where it fell. Amaru reacted quickly, bringing his foot up to kick it in the face. It flew backward and fell in a sloppy mess. While on the floor it was punctured with bullets and throwing stars. Good kick, a slightly Japanese accented voice said. Amaru recognized the voice as he looked up. Braun. Furia, get the survivor to safety. Suddenly, the masked individuals taking cover behind slabs of stone were on the move, shifting in perfect sync. Some jumped out of cover, unsheathing their swords to cut through the Wyrm mutants while others shot their pistols, curving bullets with magical potency around corners and through cracks in the rubble. One of the many made their way towards him. She was large. Her armor wasn't as modern as the others, it was Greek, stylized and marked with characters of the region. It resembled something godlike. Her golden eyes gleamed from the shadows of her hood and stripes of fur spread across her forehead. She smelled familiar. Long time no see. Haven't wasted your millions yet, have you? Ms. Marcos. If you blow my cover, I'll blow your head off. Let's move. You did your job, now we've gotta keep up appearances. Ms. Marcos snarled. Suddenly Amaru was moving through the wreckage. But he couldn't help looking back at the pack of Garou. Masked and masters of sword, gun and magic. The world felt better the more they cut through the enemy. He felt better. Yo, it's been a while. Life's been hard, but we push onward. I hope you enjoyed the chapter. I'm planning to get the next out sooner as I've got some free time coming up. TableTopSlop creators' thoughts. 1 comments 0 vote. 19. Wing it. Amaru sprinted down the stairs with Ms. Marcos, currently going by Furia, at a near stumbling pace. Which was insane considering their enhanced agility. What were those things? Amaru yelled to her as she ran in front of him. Fomori, people mutated by Banes in service of the worm. Kind of like the bloodworm. Ms. Marcos replied. Are they stronger than the bloodworm? Amaru asked. No, not usually. Then let me help. Amaru spoke over the sound of bullets flying, wolves snarling and demonic forces grunting. You have helped. Suddenly she took a left from the staircase and burst through a steel door, taking them into another open floor, only this one was filled with cubicles. Wires and computer systems were covered in magical webs while TV screens oozed black rot and crates of Wyrm tainted ale vibrated like living acid. Also, this is why the elevator doesn't show this floor, Ms. Marcos snarled. I haven't done anything but listen to snobs brag about their business ventures. Amaru said. Really? Because I heard you got us into Bradford Industries through a lucrative phone tap. Ms. Marcos shut her eyes and held up her hands. She wore thick spiked gauntlets that began to gleam as her hands became coated in fire. The flames of Hestia. Amaru wasn't sure how he knew the name of the gift, but her nostrils swirled as she began throwing balls of the white and aquamarine fire all around the office space. It ate away at the tech and Wyrm focused rot like an acid on steroids. The fire spread with an unnatural intensity. The Wyrm taint writhed and raged with echoing screams from another plane of existence. The Weaver spider spirits skittered and popped in the flames. It was fast, violent, and over in a minute. Amaru stood in the semi-silence with wide eyes. He turned to Ms. Marcos in the new piece. Niece, whoa. Ms. Marcos snarled and coughed black smoke through her lupine mempo mask. Her skin had faint burn marks that were healing slow and the veins around her eyes were darkening. Hey, are you okay? It's been a long week. I need to be cleansed by the pack. I've been around too much worm taint. It's rubbing off on me. I'll make it, but we've gotta move, pup. Ms. Marcos huffed. Amaru couldn't imagine a Wyrm tainted Garou. If a bloodworm was a Wyrm tainted vampire, he couldn't imagine what the Garou would become. Before his thoughts could spin and spiral down that path, a wolfish yelp echoed through the collapsing building from above. Ms. Marcos' sharpened ears twitched inside her hood. They did so again when a window shattered and another yelp followed. Amaru was on the move before he could think. All that mattered was he could hear. He could hear a Garou falling from the top floor. Straight down onto a stone-hard street piling up with cops, likely bought and paid for by Pentex. He ran like a juggernaut, blasting through carpet-walled cubicles and routers connected to giant monitor screens left in ash. As he ran, he transformed, taking one stage at a time. Going from a man, to a bestial human to a Krynos-formed Garou ready for war. He snarled as he burst through the wall of the high-rise and entered cold night air. Gnosis flowed. The fur along his back thickened into feathers forming around the muscle and bone birth of hawk wings. He spun, turning around to catch the thrown Garou before opening his wings and flying for the nearest rooftop. A loud metallic pop rang out from below. Amaru flinched as a white-hot pain bit into his shoulder and sent him flying at an angle. Snipers! The Garou yelled. The weight of the other Garou didn't help in calming his reckless descent. He was thinking more about the fact that he was hit by a sniper bullet. The burn was spreading beyond his shoulder. It didn't help that the one he was holding was shaking and twitching on and off. A slim skyscraper of glass and steel stood in their spinning path. With Amaru's woven agility, he partially spun out of the way, using his feet to push off the sides to create more distance with a pained growl. Nice reflexes, rookie, but let's hit the landing strip before it's too late, the Garou said before fumbling with his gauntlets as Amaru held him. Unlike Ms. Marco's, his armor was modern. More SWAT-like with flat black guards and Velcro holds. He flipped open the top half of his gauntlet and a touchscreen lit to life with touch keys and a control center. As they flew, whizzing past buildings and railways, the Garou typed away as weaver spirits in the form of holographic spiders spawned, shooting webs that connected to a distant crane. Land there. Trying. Amaru snarled as his wings began to fade. He reached, dashing over a railway as his wings disappeared. His outstretched hand gripped one of the criss-crossing beams of the crane while his other held the Garou. He used the momentum to throw the Garou up onto the top elf before flipping himself on after him. The two landed on top. A Garou in Krynos form, shedding hawk feathers and Gnosis exhaust. And another in passively futuristic vigilante samurai gear. He stood up, balancing on the beam casually as the winds blew. He looked Amaru up and down before turning to look back at the collapsed and burning high-rise in the distance. How's that for a first hunt? I don't usually play wide receiver, Amaru huffed. What? Never mind. Why did the sniper shot hurt? I thought we could withstand bullets. Amaru said. Not silver. It's a weakness. Damn it. Oh, it gets worse. The Garou pack member said with a clawed finger held up. I used my gift blackout and had an electricity spirit wipe out all tech for 3-mile radius. Whoever shot you was right under us. With the police. Meaning the police had someone with enhanced senses with them. What? Like a vampire? Amaru asked. That's what we'll have to figure out. Suddenly howls shook the skies. After we get out of here. The hunt was successful. Thanks again for the save. My name's Twitch by the way. Yo, chill lil chap. I think Bronze character inspo should be more obvious by now. But anyway, we're getting into the thick of it. Most of the baseline info and characters will be set or introduced in the next chapter and then we can start speeding up the main plot. I'm excited. I hope to get some more readers in the same headspace with better uploads and engaging plots. Let me know what ya think so far and have a good day.